This clip is brought to you by SaveWithConrad.com.
Luke Stadler wants to know, what is the most rewarding moment in your career, either as a performer, booker, or producer?
Wow. You know,
getting that owner's check in 09.
You know what? You know what I was going to say is when we had a celebratory meeting in New York City with Spike when we were going from 1 to 2 hours.
That was it.
And that was more or less, you know, I could remember going back to my room that night thinking, you know, here we are 6, 7, whatever time frame was years later. And all the, I mean, literally, well, and we've documented the first year. Tomorrow, you know, next week we're going out of business. It's never going to last. This isn't going to happen. That ain't going to happen. You know, all that kind of stuff, all that chatter from year 1 to year 2 to year 3, the Fox Sports Net, and then just, you know, that summer when we weren't on at all, we were off Fox Sports TV, and before we went on Spike, I mean, there was a hell of a roller coaster ride. And then we went 1 hour, and Conrad, our first contract with Spike was Saturday nights off Prime. Yeah. We were on at 11 Eastern. That's not the greatest time slot.
One of the worst.
Yeah. I mean, yes, Saturday nights. And we weren't there long because people immediately tuned into us, which was huge. I mean, huge. But then, okay, we're going to go Thursday nights, but we're still not going to put you in Prime. Okay. We did that for a while. And that was very, very successful. And then we went to primetime 1 hour. But when we went to primetime 2 hours, and that was the trajectory, and that's up there. I mean, that you talk about a what if we would have continued on that path and not things hadn't transpired. That was very rewarding. Obviously, a match with Shawn Michaels was huge. My matches with Kurt Angle, I remember with great fondness. I mean, at that stage of my career, I never thought I'd have those kind of matches. The Ring of King experience was big. The UK tours of TNA, the profits from those, you know, but that going to 2 hours was huge.
Can't wait to bust you on this one. Adam Leeson wants to know, who was the ultimate get in Jeff's time in charge of TNA? Was it Hogan?
Boy, going back to an earlier question, Kurt was huge.
Yeah.
I would have to say Kurt. So who else do we have in there? Cause you got Hogan, you know, Hogan, Flair, and I mean, there was so
Hogan,
many.
Flair, Sting, Savage.
Yeah. But
Angle.
I mean, he had Sting early, so he wasn't so much people. When we got him full time, it wasn't like a big publicized thing because we had him in the asylum once or twice, and then we had him, you know. So I mean, Sting's importance in the history of TNA is it without question goes up there at the very, very top. But I'd still have to say the ultimate get was Kurt.
Up next, we've got one from Alex. He says, WCW's closure stopped me watching wrestling for a few years, but seeing TNA on the wrestling channel on Sky back in 2004 got me back in. How did the deal come about? And thank you for helping getting me back into wrestling. Some of our listeners here domestically may not be familiar with Sky TV, but boy, what a platform. And TNA was there all the way back in 2004. How did that deal come to be?
So our first original international agent was a guy named Matthew Odie. And our first clearance, ironically, was in India. So the TNA brand was, you know, in India, I think 2003. And then we got that clearance early. And then not long after that, Richard Dennis and RDA and that team came over, and Paul Benson and the whole crew as time went on. But we just got that early clearance. And, you know, our buddy Grado, that's where he was introduced to the brand and really fell in love with it. It was like, that was one of those cornerstones of building the brand of TNA in the United Kingdom.
The real Brock Hall says, what do you think of the Voodoo Kin Mafia versus the WWE angle? Was there a true payoff in mind when it was created, or was it just going to be something for buzz purposes only? So for those of you who didn't watch TNA in this era, easy for me to say, you had some former WWE talent who were once upon a time pretty close with Hunter Hearst Helmsley and obviously Vince McMahon. And they called themselves the Voodoo Kin Mafia, or VKM, which is also Vincent Kennedy McMahon's initials. And they were threatening to do things in Stamford, et cetera, et cetera. It was just shock value, right?
Sure. And I remember specifically having the conversation with my man, with Road Dogg. Me and Brian were talking, and he's the one who, hey, VKM, Voodoo Kin, and I'm like, I love it. And this was Voodoo Kin Mafia, him and Billy? Who
and I think at different times, R-Truth was around too.
Because then they moved into the evolution of that was 3 Live Crew, which I really liked. Conan, Ron Killings, and Brian, a white guy, a black guy, and Hispanic guy, and they were money. They gelled and you know, the ins and outs of it, all that. But Voodoo Kin Mafia was buzzworthy, and Brian was really into it, and he can, you know, if it comes from his brain, he's got a vision for it. And we were just running with it and see what happened with it.
Yeah. The idea was it'll be the quote unquote new age outlaws versus the 2006 relaunch of DX, Hunter and Sean. So it was sort of the TNA spinoff of what they were doing with that era of DX.
Correct.
Brian Powers wants to know who's the biggest name that was almost TNA bound, but for whatever reason didn't happen. Not Warrior, as that's already been discussed. I say it's Jim Ross.
Yes. Jim flew out, had his chat with Bob Carter. I think there was some discussions with Paul Heyman.
And no disrespect to Paul Heyman. I mean, I drank the Kool-Aid. You look over my shoulder, you see the ECW world titles, the sign. I'm a huge ECW fan, but from a mainstream audience standpoint,
correct.
Jim Ross is all of a sudden the voice of your program. He lends his credibility to your promotion in a major way. Ian Bishop writes, with all the talent out there, not currently signed, and with such a wealth of streaming options out there compared to when Jeff was trying to market TNA, has he ever been tempted to try and launch his own promotion again? Next up, we got a question from Bryant. He says, in early TNA, you had some of your wrestlers work in Ring of Honor. Was there ever an attempt of co-promoting a show with them at that time, or any other promotion in the early days of TNA? Well, the reality is you guys did have some talent working both places until, well, Ring of Honor had a little bit of a scandal. And I think collectively you guys decided you needed to distance yourselves from that. And there became an impasse. You had to sort of pick a side. If you were a talent, you want to work for Ring of Honor, or do you want to work for TNA? Do I have that about right?
I mean, I can't say the scandal was I remember that we had to have first priority, and I understood Ring of Honor's, or any other promotion, you don't have to single out Ring of Honor. I always wanted to create working relationships going back to these days. That one PW, I think that's a question. I don't know if we're going to get to it today, but there's promotions all over. I mean, 0-1 in the early years, and I know they had moved on, but whatever, you name it, any kind of promotion. We got into the Mexico situation, but Ring of Honor, Gabe actually came down to the Asylum. So we wanted to work with any and all promotions because it's, you know, you're well aware that, you know, we were one night a week. We knew guys couldn't make a living and I mean, not even close just on the TNA check. So we wanted to create those working relationships, but it was a give and take of, you got to prioritize. For us to tell weekly episodic stories, we got to have a nucleus that we get first priority. So there was a quasi working relationship, but it just sort of ebbed and flowed. And then, you know, the situation that went down, I think everybody sort of went I'll say their separate ways.
I get it. It's a wrestling podcast, but he's saving us money on our mortgage. Do you really trust this process? The reviews don't lie. 5-star review after 5-star review. We make it fast, we make it easy, and it's no cost or obligation. Give us a shot to earn your business. I'm telling you, you'll be glad you did, especially if you like keeping more of your own money. You don't need perfect credit or money out of your pocket. So what are you waiting for? Hurry to savewithconrad.com. Here's one from Bryant. He wants to know who had the brilliant idea of the King of the Mountain match. Explain what that is. Some of our listeners didn't watch TNA, and it is different.
I was going to say brilliant idea. A lot of times it gets knocked. We're in the creative room, and I don't remember who all was in there, but the ladder matches I'll just say, from I don't want to put a time on it, but they had been around. Shawn and Razor's ladder match, in a lot of ways, put that on the global map, and so now we're several years removed from that. And so I threw out the idea, let's do a ladder match, but without, that's the Ultimate match. Ultimate X match is a ladder match without a ladder. The King of the Mountain match, how can we make this different and have more than two guys in it? Because if you have, anyway, so we just kicked around ideas, and I said, what happens if we hang the belt? And the old proverbial thing, when you're kids, when you climb to the top of the mountain and you call push everybody off. So we started with that seed of having the belt as a champion going, a lot of times the ladder match, it can be held up. And I said, no, a champion goes within it. We hang the belt. And then we got into with 5 guys. And I said, let's figure a way where pinfalls mean something. To add another layer to it. And then, okay, if you're going to get beat, I can remember, God, I've tried to recall this exact story, but I'm like, all right, if you get beat, are you going to be out of the match? We're going to have elimination. I thought that can really complicate it because now you're going to eliminate guys. But anyway, if you get beat, you get penalized, you get put in a penalty box. So it's pretty simple once you clear out all the clutter, and it is go in the match and hang that belt. And that's that's how the match is won. And if you get pinned along the way, you got to go in the penalty box, but you can only hang that belt unless you get a pinfall to get qualified. So it's a 2-stage match.
Penalty box.
Hey, it's Conrad Thompson. Thanks for checking out the podcast here on YouTube. Be sure to hit the subscribe button and the notifications bell so you get a notice anytime we upload some new content. And go save yourself some money right now. If you're in a 30-year loan or you have credit card debt, it's not a matter of if I can save you money. It's a matter of how much. Find out right now for free at SaveWithConrad.com.